Hey traders, this is Blake Morrow with Traders Summit, and I have with me Mr. Richard Matthews of One.io. He's with us to just discuss markets and how he feels about 2024. How you doing, Richard?
I'm good actually. I've survived Christmas. I'm a few pounds overweight, but hopefully those will go. And looking forward to what promises to be an interesting year.
Well, it should be, and Happy New Year to you. And I tell you, I checked the scale as well, and I registered a couple pounds myself. So, tis the season, right?
Yeah,
Well, speaking of which, the markets have kicked off. It seems like everybody's trickling in. We're getting more participation right now. The FX market's correcting a little bit of what we've seen of this dollar weakness as we went into year-end
yeah.
flows. I want to talk to you about how you feel about your biggest themes, what traders really need to be paying attention to going into 2024.
Okay. I think the recent dollar strength actually is not that surprising. I think it was overdone year end. You often see it reverse in January, and you do see dollar strength coming into it. Be that as it may, I think we're in for a really interesting opening to the year. I'm not going to put the time limits on it. We've got our favourite subject, non-farm payrolls, on Friday. Looking at the JOLTS figures today, they probably, you think they're going to disappoint a bit. Although ISM, they're not dreadful. I mean, they're holding up there. They're not absolutely dreadful. There's still, a load of jobs knocking around. I can't remember what the JOLTS number was. It's 8.52 million jobs still knocking around, which is a good number. So I think we're going to have an interesting time. I think the FOMC minutes, which will come out any minute now, actually, and you'll have the benefit of seeing before you probably hear this podcast. I think that they could be interesting because I suspect that Powell and the committee were a little bit more hawkish than they came across on that on December the 13th, which everyone interpreted correctly as a pivot. But I don't think it's quite as sharp as people think. So my overall view is I'm not convinced the next move by the Fed is down. I would have a small wager that the next move is up on interest rates.
You're still going to stick with that, even though the market's been pricing in. I mean, we're pricing in 6 rate cuts for 2024. You're going to still stick to that idea that maybe the Fed still has a little bit more juice in it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I still think the economy is phenomenal in the States, and people keep saying, "Oh well, look at the JOLTS." I just say that they're slightly disappointing, but they're still pretty good. My concerns are really geopolitical more than anything else. Very sadly, I think what's happening in the Red Sea will affect oil and gas. Will affect the Europe probably more than the States, but it certainly will affect the price of oil and gas. I think we're going to have a very cold winter, and I'm a keen sea swimmer, and the temperatures drop down very quickly in the sea, and we're forecast to have a really cold snap over the next few weeks. So my fear is that a lot of the inflation was blamed on energy prices. Energy prices dropped, inflation dropped. I don't think that they are going to stay low. I can see that bouncing back up a bit. I think, be careful when you poke a bear. I think what Israel did last night or yesterday in Beirut, correctly or not correctly, to behave like that. I'm not going to get into the politics of it. But I think that Hezbollah will not stand by and watch that happen. And I become increasingly worried that Iran gets dragged into this whole scenario sooner or later. And to me, that just isn't good for oil and gas or actually buying risk assets. It's a bit doom and gloom, I'm afraid.
So you think that this is going to keep the inflation picture really just it's going to make it difficult for the Fed and other central banks to really get down to their mandate of 2% inflation?
Yeah, I think so. I think it may stick at 3 actually. And I'm not a great betting man. If I was a betting man, I would think that sooner or later one of the central banks will turn around and say we're going to change the mandate. It's not 2, it's 3, and then we're all fine then. Which is all fine and dandy, but if you've got a 3% inflation, you're still going to have interest rates at 4.5%. So I think it's going to be really, really sticky to get it down much further than it's got. Certainly in the UK, whoopee, food price inflation has just dropped below 7%. Well, actually, that's 3.5 times the Bank of England's mandate for inflation. And the things which affect the person in the street are food and gas, food and gasoline and energy. And these prices, I think, are going to prove sticky. So I'm, nervous of risk assets.
So let's continue to talk about 2024 and what other themes that you think that the market will be focusing on throughout the course of this year.
I think they're going to focus on rate cuts, the 6 rate cuts which are penciled in. I think they're going to get disappointed, but they're going to be slow to react to that disappointment. They're just going to push it out a little bit further, So I think that's the thing to watch out for. I'd watch the 10-year bond quite closely. It's hovering around about 4%, so I wouldn't be surprised to see that pop back up a bit. And of course, we've got our favourite subject, politics, when we've got an election coming up in the UK, which has to take place within the next year. I think they may cut and run and go early on that, which I think you'll still get a Labour government in. Might not be quite so overwhelming as people are expecting. And then we've got the election in the States coming up in November, haven't we? Which could be interesting.
It could be. I think it will be. And yeah, speaking as an American, it's going to be a really interesting, as I said, I do a weekly video myself, and I told people they might want to get Twitter back on their phones. At the end of this year might get a little bit more volatile as it seems. So let's also just discuss a little bit about how you feel about currencies. So you've got the dollar, which obviously got pounded at the end of the year. We're seeing a recovery right now. But where do you see the standout this year? I mean, is it going to be the euro? Is the ECB going to be able to stay hawkish? Do you have the sterling? Maybe you guys avert another election and the pound rips higher. Is it the Bank of Japan that's going to normalize policy? Where are you seeing the monies go in the currency market? I know you're a buy dollar, wear diamonds type of guy. So
yeah. Well, that's a good question. And whenever anyone says that's a good question, they don't really know the answer. They're buying time to come up with the answer. I still, and I've said it time and time again, I still favour being short of the euro against everything. I just can't see what Europe can do. I think the inflation numbers are out tomorrow, but I think that they really have got lots of problems. I think the war in Ukraine is probably going much worse for Ukraine than people are actually saying, and I think you could well see Russia just walk through Ukraine eventually, which is bad news for the rest of Europe. They will then squeeze Germany like no one's business. China doesn't look brilliant, which doesn't help Europe again. What's the major exports of Italy and France are luxury goods. If China's not buying them, you've got wars going on. I just worry about that whole scenario. And don't get me wrong, I love going to Europe for a summer holiday and sitting on the beach and having fun. But I think that they have got some problems coming up. The UK is actually an interesting one because I think our interest rates will need to stay higher, certainly higher for longer than Europe, and possibly higher than for longer than the US. But they'll be in that scenario. So I'm moderately bullish of sterling, bearish of the euro. I still like the dollar because I see it as a flight to safety eventually, and I think you've got to look at that, disregarding the election, which from afar looks interesting. I think, and the yen's the interesting one because I think they will normalize sooner or later. But God knows when they're going to do it. Is it going to be this year, next year? God only knows. I'd be very, very wary of trading the yen. And do you know what I'd be doing? I'd be buying Bitcoin.
Okay, well, here it leads me to your last question, or to the last question. So you got Bitcoin has been, You've been bullish on Bitcoin. You
Yeah.
work at 1.io, which is obviously a crypto firm. You've been guiding everybody to be bullish Bitcoin for the last several months, and it's rallied quite substantially. It's stalling today on some news about the ETF, and a lot of people are brushing it off. Regardless, Bitcoin's a little bit under pressure here. Do you still see a lot of interest in Bitcoin and in cryptos in general?
Yeah, funny enough, and working one is a real education for me because it's not, cryptos aren't my background, they're not my speciality, but I actually do quite like Bitcoin. An interesting fact came out from our traders today that they're seeing 4 times as many trades, or they saw 4 times as many trades in Bitcoin in December than they normally would. And that to me says retail's getting involved in there. I think that the ETF will come. Now, whether people have loaded up already and you should sell on the ETF news or you should buy on the ETF news, I don't know. I think you probably should just scalp it. I think people are starting to tuck it away. It trades quite nicely on charts. So to me, that would be a buy. So I'd be buying Bitcoin. I'd be buying dollars. I'd have a little bit of sterling. I'd be short of euros. Commodity currencies I'd be a little bit wary of as well because of China. But I think we're in for a real interesting year.
All right. Well, Richard, I'm interested. I'm sorry. I'm excited to have an interesting year with you and being able to meet with you throughout the course of 2024. And you've been a pleasure to meet with once a week, and I look forward to our weekly chats here, right here only on Trader Summit. So make sure you all give them a big thumbs up if you enjoyed this content, and subscribe to the channel down below so you don't miss any of Richard's comments about the markets. Now, Richard, what's the best way for traders to find to follow your work?
You can find me at 1.io, the handle 1.io on Twitter, or at Dickie Matthews on Twitter. I post on LinkedIn, or you can just contact me. I'm easily accessible, and always happy to talk about the markets. And a pleasure as always, Blake.
Happy New Year to you and your family, and I look forward to our next conversation next week.
Fantastic. Have a good week. Cheers now. Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey traders, Blake Morrow here. Thanks for stopping by our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also click the bell notifications so you do not miss any of our market-related trading analysis from some of the leading industry experts. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you in the next video.